Hey, it's Saturday morning. It must be time for the guys who get up way too early to sit and talk over a cup of coffee. Dewey Freeman, Mark Sylvester here, the elders and the nation. Dewey, how are you, my friend?
I am well. Uh, we've got another 2 feet of snow this week.
Oh my goodness.
um, I spent my early morning talking about getting up way too early, up feeding and trudging through the snow, making sure my horses are well. And I actually came down and just shared with my partner Kimberly that I was feeling a bit vulnerable. I don't know exactly why. I have some guesses, but vulnerable in a way of being open and tender and kind, not vulnerable in a way of
Vulnerable in the way
negative.
that pea shoot, when it breaks the ground and it's starting up and you know that it's not there yet, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, oh, it's a little fragile. Is that fair?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So last week, and I'm enjoying. By the way, Nation, thank you so much for stepping up and getting in, commenting, and talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what this is about. So we had a bunch of ideas on things to talk about, and the one that you both of us resonated with is self-judgment. So we'll call this a self-judgment show, and I want to kick it off with something that was a theme from my Kimberly a couple years ago. She's the one who comes up with the themes for our TEDx. And
Oh,
it was
cool.
called The Stories We Tell. And it's the stories we
Mm.
tell each other, the stories we're told, and the stories we tell ourselves. And that's what I thought. That was the picture that came to my mind when we said self-judgment, because that's a story we're telling ourselves.
So say that again, just so
So
one, I can
the
understand
sure,
better, and also everyone who's listening, the stories that.
the stories we tell each other,
Okay.
the stories we are told,
Okay.
the stories we tell ourselves.
Got it.
And we crafted a whole day where the talks had some dotted or direct line to thematically to one of those, because as we know, everything is stories. So in this area of self-judgment, I, for one reason or another, I learned early on, because we've already talked about, my first divorce at 20, and just all the drama and trauma around that, and I wasn't good enough and wise. I mean, all of that stuff.
Right.
I was fortunate enough, though, to have I don't know if it was a mentor or it was a book, but I know I came out of that like, I just don't do that. And so and yet I know that's probably one of the number one things guys do. I have a little bit of it, of course,
Well, yeah, we all do at times.
but it isn't a demon for me, but it feels like it is a demon for most.
I would say on any given week, I have 25 to 30 hours in therapy sessions with people. Um, it's not always 25 to 30 people. Sometimes I do an hour and a half or 2 hour sessions, but virtually every person that comes and where we're working together, if that person were able to drop their self-judgments, I would frankly be out of a job.
No kidding.
And clearly, and this is a little bit of an aside, but actually I think it may fit. If I do my job well, my job is to work myself out of a job.
Yeah.
That's what my job, that's what my goal is when I do this well.
So you're saying you don't do a very good job.
Well, now we're talking about judgment from other people.
There's this self-judgment is, I think it has a cousin who's called perfection.
Oh, that's, yeah. Well, not only perfection, but there's that. There's also the piece of now. I was joking about judgment from others. I know you know that, but I want everybody to know that. But there's also this piece of if I judge myself hard enough, then you won't.
Oh, that's a story you tell yourself.
Right. It's like, okay, well, if I say that I'm a piece of shit therapist, then Mark won't have to tell me that. And or if I say I'm not good enough, I'm not a good enough partner, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not a good enough lover, I'm not a good enough provider, I'm not a blah 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 blah, then somebody else doesn't have to do it. And so, at least
Huh.
in that realm,
Huh.
it's also self-protective.
But you're not a lot of fun to be around.
Well, that'd be true. That'd be true. And it's still self-protective, because if I do it to myself, then I don't have to wait for someone else to do it.
Yet what's interesting about every one of those sentences, if we were to go back and diagram each of the I'm not sentences that you said, is the thing that was consistent in all of them, in addition to I'm, was the word not. And I wonder if it's that I'm Optimus Prime when it comes to being looking at the world through not rose-colored glasses, through pretty goddamn clear glasses. But I am an
Mm.
optimist in life, so it's part of my DNA. Thankfully, I got a little extra splash of that when they were,
Ending
recombining
that
my
out.
DNA. Yeah,
Mm.
and so the I'm not is I'm not, I'm not, I'm not. You could easily, just as easily say, I am a good listener. I am a good
Mm.
provider. I am a good planner. I am. So that's the story you tell yourself. If you're stuck in an I'm not loop, you don't, I don't think I love that one talk we had about creating space for something to happen. And it might have been the transitions
Mm-hmm.
talk on creating the space. And I challenge myself all the time if I get the I'm not. So, no, well, what are you? Well, I'm this and I'm this, I'm this.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more, at least in my opinion, the more time I spend there, the less time I'm in the I'm not.
Right.
I'm I'm curious. I'm curious about this. This comes from martial arts for me, um, where we weren't ever allowed to apologize for doing something wrong. We were
Mm.
not
Really?
allowed,
Like when
not,
you were in
no,
the dojo?
no, 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 no. You couldn't say, I'm sorry.
No
Like
kidding.
I don't pull my punch and I hit you. I'm sorry. Oh man, you say I'm sorry and Grandmaster just went off. Don't say you're sorry. Just don't do it again.
Right.
And so that's what I think it is when if my training in my brain is I'm not, ooh, okay, just don't do that thing that triggered that thought, and instead work on your self-improvement. And maybe you were a little dickish, maybe you were
Mm-hmm.
not listening and paying attention, maybe you were whatever one of those knots were.
So what's interesting to me with that, one is I love that, by the way. It's like, don't say you're sorry, just don't do it again. Um, what that says to me is well, I'm having 27,000 thoughts. It's like Black Friday, after
Well, we'll pick one.
Thanksgiving.
It would.
After Thanksgiving, everyone's trying to get in the door of Walmart and the door's not
And
big
your
enough.
thoughts are rushing to your mouth.
Yeah. When I work, this is actually really kind of tie in, believe it or not. When I work with people, and particularly parents, around working with their children, I actually ask people not to say good boy as much as I ask them not to say bad boy,
Hmm.
because both are judgments. If I say, and I say, good man, Mark, that's a judgment. If I say bad man, Mark, that's a judgment. And part of what your grandmaster or sensei, whichever the right term is saying is don't do either.
Yeah.
Just be. And what I wonder about is if that's part of your optimism is instead of going, God, I did that great. Now I'm okay. Or God, I did that horribly. Now I'm horrible. And it's like, can we get to a place where we just did it? And
you opened up a long ago. Remember we talked about I'm okay, you're okay, as I think it was the book that got me through that divorce when I was 20,
right,
21 years old, right?
Yeah.
And what I remember about it was, and you'll remember this bit, for me it's distant memory, but the notion of the parent child. So like you do, your partner does something and you respond as if you're the parent. Hey, you did that wrong. Hey, don't do that again. And the child and that person is reacting as a child. So there's that parent child dynamic, even though you're not actually their parent, as
right.
opposed to the adult relationship that was explained. And I think that's where I learned this, where I would come at this. An adult wouldn't say that to another adult.
Exactly. Yeah, and what you're talking about, the old transactional analysis, adult, parent, child, and adult, parent, child, and who's talking to who.
Yeah.
If I say a particular kind of thing to you, it could be from a parent to a child versus, or I could say another thing, it could be child to a parent versus adult to adult, which is again, there's a neutral place to come in, a place of, oh, I just did that.
Yeah. What do the Buddhists call it? Buddhist Zen master, you. Don't they call it observing with interest?
Yeah, they call it observing with interest. A lot of people will call it beginner's mind. Some people will call it non-attachment. Have to be careful with the non-attachment perspective, because some people interpret that as don't attach to anything, right, including another being.
Right.
But I think my perspective is it's not attaching to the outcome, particularly with judgment.
By the way, I want our listener to know, in the not saying you're sorry, and it's almost like you're doing an instant after action review. What worked, what didn't work, what needs work. Like, hey, that needs work. Your control needs some work, or that didn't work. I wasn't even or wasn't present, and that's what happened. Okay, what? So you're kind of doing that in real time. However, in intimate relationships, say you're sorry, and don't do it again. That sorry goes a long, long way.
Right. Talk about. So, and let me go with that a minute. There is a man who I just loved. His name was Reb Zelman. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He was a head of the World Religious Practices and Studies at Naropa University for years. He hung out with the likes of the Dalai Lama and Gandhi, those dudes. Um, and when I was lucky enough, well, I taught at Naropa for 31 years. And when I was lucky enough to be able to uh, connect with him, to invite him into my classes, I would often invite him in. And he was kind enough to come in and talk. And I mean, um, he was just mind-blowingly wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a very short aside, I had, this was by pure luck, I had the luck to have a private audience with the Dalai Lama
Oh, wow.
in the late 90s. And the presence of Reb Zalman was the same kind of presence.
Mm.
Um, but Reb Zalman actually, and this is picking up on what you were saying, he spoke a lot about not saying I apologize and not saying I'm sorry. What he spoke about, and especially in intimate relationships, is saying I have sorrow in my heart for
Mm.
my behavior or my actions.
That's what a much more powerful frame, and the person who's receiving
Yeah,
those words has that sense, or the hopeful optimism that that incident that caused that sorrow won't happen again. Um,
exactly.
the
And
and chances are you're gonna be a dick again. You know.
yeah, pretty high chance. We try and cut it down from 50-50 to, a couple percent. But the piece for that is if I say to you, hey, Mark, I'm sorry, the verbiage is I am sorry. That means that's a judgment. Because we
Mm.
use those terms. Hey, you're sorry, motherfucker. You know,
Mm.
we use those terms as a judgment versus um, saying, because if I say to you, hey, Mark, I'm sorry, I'm telling you something about me that I'm a sorry SOB, at least possibly, not always, but possibly. That's a really different thing than say, Mark, I made a mistake and I feel sorrow in my heart. It's there's no judgment in that.
Yeah.
There's no saying there's something wrong with me. It's like, well, I made a mistake, which is we do. It's also saying, I feel such deep sorrow inside of me for this behavior, for what happened between us. And it changes the whole process because it actually allows you, if you choose, depending on what happened, you get to feel sorrow too in your heart. And you get to receive that in your heart
Right.
instead of oh yeah, he said he's sorry.
The that just sets up the beginning of what will be a healing conversation, hopefully.
Exactly. And the process of creating openings
There's a
is,
closing.
yeah, well, if I
There's a
say I'm
closing
sorry,
right behind.
then it's done. If I say I feel sorrow in my heart, that creates an opening for us to
Yeah.
work with whatever.
It's
And
also the chambered thing to say. This is when this happens. I just say that, and there's no attachment to it. I'm not using the word attachment, but
yeah, I get what you're saying.
however, the other one, also learned a long time ago. If I make a statement that is emotionally based, it can't be. It's usually not argued with. That's the way you feel. Okay, that's the way you feel.
Got it.
That's different than a judgment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this I feel sorrow is an emotional thing that's actually a much better way. I hopefully the guys hear this part. This may be the in each one of our shows. Have you noticed there's a little nugget in there? It takes us a while to get there, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
nugget. Let's pop back up a bit. This self judgment, as in the frame of the I'm not good enough. How much of, when you said of your 35 hours a week, that's a consistent theme, is the I'm not good enough part of it a big part of that as well? Or is that just a minor subset?
No, it's a substantial part of it. And it takes many themes. It's like I'm not a good enough provider. I'm not a good enough husband or wife. I'm not a good enough friend. I'm not a or I don't have the right to say X, Y, and Z because I'm not good
Mm.
enough. But the the depth of self judgment is, and a few weeks ago we talked about messages coming in from a somatic perspective.
Yeah.
Much of, at least in my experience, the depth of self-judgment comes, and the roots of self-judgment come in on a somatic level, versus just someone telling you something. It's like people feel it in their guts, people feel it in their soul, versus going, yeah, I don't have that skill.
It's funny
That
when
makes
you
sense.
said that. Yeah, oh, it's completely just so there's that thinking brain, the story you tell yourself, right? I'm telling myself that story,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to we've talked about the gut, we talked about the
Yeah.
bloodstream, we've talked about so many different
Mm-hmm.
type of analogies. I think that when you feel it in your gut, that's that sense of the somaticness, if that's a word,
Right.
of it is that's the one you pay attention to both, but I think by paying attention to that one has captured your whole body in one way or another.
Right.
So, um, how when you catch yourself having that, and because we do a lot of speaker coaching work and a lot of working with leaders,
Mm.
the
Like speaker coaching, where you're helping people present.
yeah, or
Mm-hmm.
or in my case, it's working with organizations, and it's like there's this imposter syndrome, which I think is related. I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough, or why am I the guy to a girl to present this? Who gave me permission? And I want to end on the word permission because that's a real loaded word around here in that we say you what gives you permission to
Uh,
be the person who's going to bring that idea to the world, or in my day job, what gives your company permission to say we're going to solve type 2 diabetes. Okay.
mm,
And it is on purpose meant to be provocative, because the first time I heard it, I was in a meeting in New York City, and the guy across the table looked at Kimberly and I both, and he was deadly serious. So, what gives you guys permission to even be here?
whoa.
And
Did you like shit your pants, or what do you do?
that's a test of ego strength.
Yeah.
That's a test of ego strength. And that's when you say, well, first off, you invited us, but that's not
Mm,
what's most important. We're the smartest people in the world on this thing that we're doing, and we've done this, this, and this. Is let me tell you again why we're sitting here. We earned our seat at this table
mm,
because of this, 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 and this. And I feel like we coach people a lot on owning the permission to be the person who can deliver the promise that you've made to solve the problem you've identified.
so where's the permission come from?
from your experience. You have to give it yourself. This can't come from external accolade. It needs to, hey, I've put in the work. I studied, I did the research, I did the reporting, I did the experiments. I've got 30 years of therapy, 50,000 plus
Hmm.
hours behind me. I know what I'm talking about. And again, don't be a dick, right? It's like,
Right.
I'm well rooted in this topic. I'm, in business terms, I would call them a subject matter expert, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes they don't say, hey, I've done 70 dives. I have a really good understanding of a couple of things around. I've done 700, but I've done 70.
Hmm.
And people who don't know you need to know, well, what gives this cat permission to tell me any of those things? And this is, I'm going to land this plane. I think when you find the way to give yourself permission to be and to have an opinion and to think strongly and intelligently about a thing, I don't think that can live in a world that says I'm not. There you go.
There you go. So what in that? Keep going. You're on a great track here, I think. What judgments are behind the inability to give ourselves permission?
I think partially it is the stakes where you are having the conversation. If the
Right.
stakes are I'm doing a TED talk, then I measuring myself against all the other TED stuff. It's all external, right? It's all external.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
measuring my level of expertise or my knowledge of the single idea that I'm bringing to the table against tens of thousands of other people, which gets us back to judgment, which is, well,
Right.
don't judge. Like, I mean, can you, you know, even if, and your chances are you're not the world expert on that subject, the fact that you have lived your life, which is unique to you, and you've been able to connect the dots all the way along
Hmm.
till you have this aha moment and insight, an idea of, maybe we should be thinking about this problem this way. What if we turn the whole thing upside down and look at it this way? You're the only one in the world who ever did that. And by virtue of that, you have permission to talk to us because
Right.
you were the one who said, hold it, everybody. Pick that thing up and look at it this way.
Hmm.
No one
Hmm.
had ever done that. So the permission is you were the one who was clever enough, if that's what you wanted. The clever is a judgment, but you were the one who, in fact, did just
Creative.
look,
Right.
look at that. And I'm the first one who won't give myself. I got an extra dose of the humble pill too,
Hmm.
and friends will say, "Dude, you don't have to be so humble. You can brag a little bit." And I said, "Yeah, well, I tend not to. However, you still need to be able to say, no, I know my shit,
Right.
and and you know it enough to know what you don't know."
So if we have gotten the messages and we carry out those messages of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't have enough experience, I'm an imposter, I'm all of those things, that stops our level of creativity.
100%.
What I'm hearing you speak about around permission is you, from your experience in your life, that experience allows you the permission to be creative. Because when you walk into a company, or if I sit down with a family, or I'm going to Mexico to teach, the permission I want is a permission to share what I know and to be creative, because that's what people are asking for. And and that's the same as if I'm coming down from feeding the horses and walking to the house and make a statement around something that's going on for me, or if I am trying to solve a problem with building something. It's like, where do I allow myself to have the permission to be creative? And where do I allow myself to, and I mean this in a very serious way, to make up shit?
And I want to let's stay right there, because I'm reminded of, we had this conversation before. It was the acting as if.
Mm-hmm.
And you, I don't think, I mean, you don't want to bullshit your way through stuff. It's not fake it till you make it. It's not that. It's not that at all. It is the, um, I don't know who said it, but it was the unconscious competence, like the
Right.
conscious competence, unconscious competence, and then unconscious. There's a triplet in
It's
there.
unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. Unconscious competence.
So act as if you have unconscious competence, and
Right.
it's kind of like that's where I want to live. I want to, that the notion that our unconscious is 50,000 times smarter and bigger and fully formed than our conscious self is.
Mm-hmm.
When someone told me that, and I respected them, so I believed them. There's no way to. There may be a way to prove it. Doesn't matter. I heard that in a way, and I was like, well, hold it. Then my unconscious self is way smart, way competent, way
Very,
capable.
very,
Just
yes.
I will just trust, and God damn it, we're back to trust. Um, I'll trust myself that even if I don't know it, I'll get through it, because I've honed the tools, in this case, of creativity, exploration, discovery, curiosity, all related to understanding that problem that is. We talked about transitions. That transition,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going along and then boop, something happens, push me up, I'm at another level. It's all new. It
Right.
doesn't mean you can't deal with it. It just means it's new and you haven't dealt with it yet.
With exactly with what you're saying, would would it be fair to say that the lack of trust is what creates self-judgment and judgment of others?
Yeah. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, let's leave that one, and maybe we can explore that a little bit more in the future.
You're so, it's, we could almost, we said the stories we tell, the stories we're told, the stories we tell ourselves. It's the trust we have, that we trust ourselves. That's the story.
Exactly.
We endow others with our trust, and others endow us with their trust.
Exactly.
Had never put that together. Saturdays are like this for both of us, that there are these aha moments, and the fact that it is so let's try to get, so we've figured out the diagnostic. Let's figure out how to be prescriptive for a bit, because I know guys who are listening to this are thinking, okay, okay. I mean, there's a lot here, right?
Oh,
What
okay.
do they do? So
What they do.
let's bring it home, Doc. It's what's
The first piece of working on this is awareness.
yes.
So if we're going to ask the men and women, hopefully, who are watching this, it's spend the week just being aware without judgment when you're judging, and being aware without judgment of when you judge what trust is not there.
My teacher
So,
calls that noting. So spend the week noting. So you're just, to your point, just observing, you're just noting it. Was it a thought or was it a feeling?
right. And is it a lack of trust of yourself? Is it lack of trust of another? Is it lack of trust of the situation?
Or people didn't trust you.
Right. Or
But
that you
that
weren't
other one is
trusted.
like, hold it. I'm not trustworthy. Oh, excuse me. What have I done to break trust? I mean, there's a bunch of stuff there, right?
Totally. And also be aware that just because someone doesn't trust you doesn't mean that you're not trustworthy.
Mm,
Don't let that one slip
that's
through.
on them.
Yeah, yeah, you bet. So you do need to check out if you've been trustworthy. If you haven't been, then you need to clean that up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
don't get
Yeah.
yourself in a trap of just because somebody else says, "Oh, I don't know if I trust you." That doesn't mean you're not trustworthy. It just means that they may be struggling. So let them struggle.
A little sidebar on that one specifically. Um, when we, the collective, we are in a situation to introduce ourselves to a group of new people who do not know us. It happens to me 8 times a day.
Right.
I'm meeting a new company, or I'm meeting a new CEO or a new somebody, and there is no trust. That doesn't mean it's trust depleted. It's just that we haven't built trust. As you go
Right.
back and listen to our first show, um, which is why we love storytelling and humor. In my case,
Mm-hmm.
storytelling and
Mm-hmm.
humor will go a long way towards, in that very first time of talking with people, they will trust you. They will, let's say, they won't, this is a double negative, they won't not trust you.
Right. Right.
They go, okay, well, okay, seems trustworthy. He's been vulnerable. He's told us a story that showed his humanity, like you started today, saying, "Hey, I'm feeling a little vulnerable." That makes that's honest, right? That honesty infuses encourages us to be trusting of the other. How so someone who's listening and is hearing this, and they may be like at a 10 on this being a problem in their life, does the I've got to feel like the if you just had, where's my little notebook, if you just had your little notebook, here's my metaphorical notebook, and I
Mm-hmm.
just, oh, I did that again, and just put a check mark, just put a slash, cross them off, just, it's all you have to do. You're not, you, do you believe that at the end of a week, for 7 days, doing something for 7 days is a magical thing, that they've primed themselves to actually go in and start working on it?
You bet. And the next step, when we have those little pieces written down, if I say, I'm not good enough to blank, and we find that there's a pattern in there, the next step is to ask ourselves if it's true.
Mm,
Because some stories are metaphorical, some stories are true, and some stories are fiction. And many times when we are judging ourselves, we're really talking about fiction.
mm.
One of the things, I know we talked about ending this a few minutes ago, but maybe we'll end on this one perhaps. one of the things that our prefrontal lobe or forebrain, whichever kinds of terms you want to use, allows us to do is create fiction. And that's a very different process than other mammals have.
Hmm.
And, you know, a bit more of a, it's like we can make up, we can make shit up. We can create fiction. We also, when we're doing that in a way that we're judging ourselves, we need to double check to see if our fiction is actually true. Is it
It might
fiction
have
or is it
been
sometimes
something
it,
that well, it's a story we heard when we were young,
you bet,
and we just keep repeating that. That story's on an endless loop.
you bet, exactly. So keep track of your judgments and then ultimately begin asking yourself if those judgments are true.
Dewey Freeman, man, I love our conversations.
I do too. I hope that other people get half as much out of this as I get out of this and get out of connecting with you.
I can't wait till we get to dig into another deep one. If you've got an idea or there's a balloon you want us to float and it's got some, just leave us a note. We love hearing from all of you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.